Hey everybody, welcome into this week's episode of the Talk to Walk podcast, where we gather around the couch right now. Tables are around us, and we have conversations about topics in life that we hope help you walk better in your life. And today I have a very good friend of mine, a mentor in ways that he didn't even know he's a mentor of mine, Josh Lowe. He's one of our student ministry leaders here at the church. He's a dad of two awesome kids. His wife is one of our admins here at the church, and he's a super dude. And today we're going to be talking about what does it look like to lead in the home, and how do we, as you mainly as parents, but as kids, as brothers, as sisters, as uncles, as aunts, how do we lead our families well in our homes? And so that's kind of what we're headed today. But Josh, welcome, man. How are you?
Man, I feel great, and thank you for that humbling introduction, brother. I appreciate that. I didn't know I was a mentor to anybody.
Yeah, you are, in ways you don't even know. But with the intro comes a question that I believe, now that we've talked about it pre-show, is kind of a brain teaser. Are there more doors or windows in the world?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to go with windows, man. Just thinking about my own home, 28 windows because I had to get them quoted for replacement, and 4 doors. So just law of averages here, I'm thinking more windows.
Okay, so now when we ask the question, though, is it just exterior doors or do interior doors count?
That's a good question. We should define that.
Because, you got to think. Most closets have like the double opening door thingy, so that's really 4 doors, right?
Yeah, closets. Shower doors.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's a coin toss.
Cabinets. Are cabinets considered doors?
Well, there's doors, cabinet doors, yes. So I don't know. I'll go with doors. You've changed my mind.
I'm going to go with windows. I think I'm going to go with windows, man.
All right.
28 windows on the exterior house. That's a lot of windows, man.
It is a lot.
Oh, that's funny. But hey, we're excited that you're here, man. And I just want to kick off the conversation, have a little fun, but really, kind of want to hear your story, man. You're from not here in Clinton or Anderson County area.
Yeah.
You're down the road from Wartburg. Is that right?
I'm from the big metropolis in Morgan County. Yeah, the county seat, Wartburg.
Wartburg. It's almost like
Go Bulldogs.
It's almost like Whataburger, just without the.
It is like Whataburger.
I guess so. Yeah, I just thought about that.
Wartburg.
Whataburger. Warthog. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, we're running on a tangent, but today we're talking about how do you lead in your home, and so man, I really want to dive into you as your current life. You're a dad. You've got 2 amazing kids. They're 2 of our students, a wife, but you didn't have that growing up. Obviously, you grew up and matured and came into that. So for you, let's dive right into it. For you growing up, let's start there. What was it like for you being led in the home as a kid yourself, from your dad or an uncle or an aunt or a mom? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I'm going to be real with this, and I love my dad. I do. I have a great relationship with my dad, but my dad wasn't what I would consider a spiritual leader in the home. He never, really went to church. Church wasn't an emphasis. My mom was a solid Christian woman and somebody that I always looked up to, and her parents, were amazing Christian people in my life. Her dad, my grandfather, passed away when I was 8 years old, but he was somebody that I looked up to. I don't think so much at that point in my life as a spiritual influence so much, but just as somebody that I loved and I knew cared about me, and he was cool and he was funny. But I knew he went to church. I knew he was a deacon at his church. And but again, like at 5, 6, 7, 8, I didn't really know what that truly meant, not having really been raised in church, so much. I didn't think to extract that from what I thought about him, if that makes sense. So, the times that I went to church was typically with friends. My very, very best friend, Preston, growing up, his dad was a pastor. So I would spend a lot of Saturday nights with him and go to church Sunday, et cetera. My mom would take me to church, and we eventually started going to the same church together where my friend pastored, actually, and became members, and later moved to another church and became members together. So she was the spiritual light that I had in my family, in my home, was my mom. And my mom was one of those women that, like old-fashioned Baptist, like she would shout. Not just amen or raise her hand and praise, but shout, and the hair would like crawl out of places in your body that you didn't realize you had hair. and I can always remember that about her, man, how spiritual she would get, man, how she would let the Spirit just lead her, and she would react to that, in her own way. I mean, I miss her so much, but, you know, she helped me learn and taught me morals and values, you know, that were biblical, even though I guess I didn't realize it maybe in my younger life or whatnot. And a lot of that has obviously, I guess, translated into how I parent today, along with, you know, just my own journey of learning Jesus and loving, trying my best to love him and have relationship with him and biblical study and, you know, maturity over time. All that combined, packed, you know, into one, I guess, is what I've used to be what little bit of a spiritual leader I probably really am in my home. Maybe too much of a TMI there or whatever, but that's kind of where I come from. You know, I didn't grow up as a preacher's son or anything like that, or even any preachers in my family. You know, a lot of drama, a lot of anger in my home, a lot of chaos sometimes. You know, arguments, mom and dad arguing, and, you know, family in and out of jail, and, you know, I just didn't have a lot of solid spiritual cornerstones in my life, or, you know, a foundation to build from in my family, necessarily outside of my mom and her parents.
Yeah,
that's really it.
Yeah, man. Well, and it's funny just how much our stories correlate, because mine was, in a way, the same. You know, dad absent, uncle and grandpa raised me essentially, and, you know, pretty much my mom and dad were married, but single mom. So for me, you know, I look back on my story and see the impacts that were not had that I wish that I had until later in life. And so, you know, not having kids myself, you having kids, that changes the dynamic completely. Because, I mean, you're coming out of a home where you grew up without that true leadership into, okay, now you're married and then you've got kids. Yeah. And so, you know, talking through this episode today, you know, this is not just for dads. This is not just for parents. I believe this can be for anybody in the home, and even looking at the kids and how they lead in the home. But for you, in that season of your life of growing up and maturing and absorbing, because as kids, we're sponges, man. I mean, we absorb everything around us, and subconsciously, my counselor even said this, that you are a result of your subconscious learning experiences coming to fruit in your life.
Totally believe that.
That things that you didn't even remember, or that you can't remember, subconsciously you still remember. Yep. And that confused me, but he said everything you've experienced and the people that have been around you have formed you in some way. Yep. And that impact is lasting, whether it's good or bad. And so for you, you know, talking about the chaos in your home and you know, dad not being there, looking back now, we're going to take a step back real quick. Looking back as a grown man, how old are you?
44.
44, man.
I'm still a young dude.
Yeah, you're
in
still
my prime.
Yeah, man, you're in your prime. Shout out to Logan Paul for prime drinks, right? Is that him?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know.
Yeah, we like Conor McGregor anyway. But in that season of your life, looking back on it now, what did you wish you had that you didn't have?
I wished I would have had, you know, honestly, I wish I would have been raised more in church. I wish that I would have had more restraint, I think, in what I was allowed to do. Mm-hmm. Obviously, hindsight's 20/20. To your question, I can look back and change things, right? So, you know, I made a lot of dumb decisions, man. I did a lot of dumb things and let friends influence me. And, you know, I don't want to get into all of that, but, you know, I soiled my oats, right, as the old saying goes, and done a lot of dumb teenager things and early 20 things and whatnot. And I think I would hope that if I would have had more of a true biblical style home, I guess, in a traditional sense, that maybe I would have, you know, not taken some of those paths. You know, I've told my kids many times, and a lot of people I've told, and Cynthia probably knows, but, you know, I really don't know why or how I'm still alive. Honestly, through some of the stupid things that we done growing up, man. We've just done stupid things, crazy things, dangerous things, you know. Going down a crazy, curvy, hilly road in my Camaro at 80 miles an hour and the speed limit's 20. You know, I mean, it's dumb stuff. I don't know how I got home sometimes, but I did. God's brought me here, you know, and there's been a lot of times, even recently, where I still try to search, and in my quiet time, I'm like, Lord, what really is my purpose? You know, you've brought me through a lot. And, you know, what is it that you need me to fulfill? What am I not doing? What do I still need to do for you? You know, that's kind of, it's kind of my give and take with the Lord, recently. And I guess the more I age too, the more I realize I'm probably getting closer to the end of life. That's midlife crisis, maybe. I don't know what you call that, but it's like I've really tried to become more focused recently on over the last probably 5, 6, 7 years on what really is my purpose. Am I fulfilling what God designed me to do? Am I the man He needs me to be? I know I'm far from the person He would want me to be biblically, as far as sin and things like that. But am I fulfilling His purpose? Am I walking the path that He designed me to walk?
Yeah. Yeah, and with that, I believe, as I'm 29, well, I will be 29 next month. Looking at that from someone who's you're not that much older, but you're older and more old. Wow, I butchered that sentence.
I'm wiser.
You're wiser. There we go. You have more gray hair than I do. Looking at your experiences and hearing some of your story and the things that you didn't share that you've shared with me before. It's so cool to see that God's redemptive plan is so good and that there's a purpose for all things. And so, you take what you've learned and what you didn't have. And I feel like that you, in just the life that I've been able to live with you and see with your kids and your wife, you've taken advantage of every opportunity you can to lead your family right. And, obviously, you say it and we all say it. We're never where we need to be. We never arrive. That's something that we never will.
Right.
But ultimately we strive. And so for you, coming out of that chaos and not having that growing up to then meeting your now wife, Cynthia, having kids, what in your mind shifted to say, I've got to lead my family better than I was led when I grew up? What was that like?
I just quickly, the answer is just simply, I knew what I didn't have and I knew what I wanted my family to have. And that was something that Cynthia and I talked a lot about, before we even got married. She was very different than me. She's the complete opposite. Her home life and her childhood revolved around nothing but church. Her grandfather was a pastor, founded a church where we actually, I wouldn't say met, probably did meet to some extent, were members of, for many years before moving here to Clinton. She and I were the youth directors there, kind of did it, together for like 12 years before moving here to Second Baptist Church. Her life was so different. And, the things that I was tolerant of, she was not, and she was firm against, and we had a lot of those conversations, and we knew, what kind of family we wanted to have. We knew we wanted to have a family that was raised in church and where we, as parents, done the best that we could, to raise our kids from a biblical perspective in a spiritual home. But my picture of that was very different than her reality of that and how she was raised in a true spiritual home and family, whole family. Was, very spiritual, strong Christian people, amazing people. I just didn't have that.
Yeah.
So those two things literally married.
Opposites attract.
Became right. We were totally opposites, and we work, man. She's my balance, in so many ways. So that's really, what it was, man. It was like I knew that I wanted something different for my family and my personal family, my wife and my kids. I knew I wanted to raise them in church. I knew I wanted them to know how important Jesus should be in our life. And, that church should be a huge part of who we are and what we are as a family and as a people. I wanted them to have that experience, and I wanted them, maybe some selfishness, I wanted them to be able to see their dad surfing, but I wanted to be that, example, I guess is what I'm looking for. I wanted to be the example that I didn't have necessarily from a male figure.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's a good point we could talk about real quick. I think a lot of times people, when we're looking at what a spiritual leader should look like in a home, is it the dad, is it the mom, or is it a combination? I think a lot of people, very traditional, it should definitely be the dad. Well, I do know and believe biblically that I am ultimately responsible for my home. I am, and that's biblical. But I don't think I'm the only spiritual leader in the home. I think my wife, Cynthia, should and does play a huge role in that. You know, there are things that she does as a parent that I don't do as a parent. And it wasn't that we planned it that way. It's just how it works.
Yeah.
You know, there's motherly things, there's fatherly things. I'm definitely the disciplinarian in the home. She's more of the nurturer, you know, things along those lines. But long answer to your question probably, but I think it just, you know, I knew the answer quick. I wanted something different for my kids.
That's good. And, you know, the questions that follow that, you know, the hows and the whys and the whats with all that, you know, kind of where I see, you know, just that thought going is, how hard was it? It
was hard. You know, it wasn't hard to be in a church and to go to church, you know, because I had that desire in my heart too. What was hard was when kids came along.
Yeah, because now you're leading them.
Because now I'm trying to lead them. Cynthia had a foundation, man. My wife is an amazing Christian woman that I look up to, and I've always looked up to, just like I look up to the rest of her family. They're just great Christian, strong-hearted, you know, biblically characterized type people. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to get too crazy with the adjectives, but they're just good people, man.
Yeah.
And people you want to look up to spiritually. I just leave it at that. And I knew I wanted to go to church, and I knew I didn't have to change her life, her thoughts, her beliefs, you know, none of those things. What was hard was when we had kids, because, you know, I see a spiritual leader as someone that, see a spiritual leader as someone that never really got mad, you know, didn't discipline people. You know, I think I had a distorted view of what a spiritual leader should be in the home. And I think I tried to lump everything about parenting into a spiritual leader.
Yeah.
Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. But I've had a lot of learning to do
I'm sure,
as
man.
a parent. And, you know, I can only hope that, you know, the kids look back someday and say, man, I had good parents. You know, I'm still learning, frankly, how to be a parent a lot of times.
Well, I mean, the world we live in is ever changing, man.
I mean, absolutely
both your kids are in eighth grade and freshmen,
right?
You know, so I mean, they're growing up. It's kind of weird. I've had them since they were in like sixth grade. It makes me feel old too. You know, we're all growing up in a way,
right?
But you know, even now, I mean, you know, the parenting things that we've done so far with our church and just the conversations we've had around, you know, discipleship and leadership in the home and how do we help and how does, you know, our people help us as a church and it's just it's ebb and flow. I mean, there is so many different things that are happening and really, you know, that's kind of the crux of the conversation is in 2023 with two kids, boy and a girl, how do you make it work? I mean, dude, with social media, everything they face at school, sports, you know, you have a job, you know, your wife does. I mean, you're back and forth. How do you make it work, man?
Well, you know, and I don't know if we do make it work, but I mean, how it works in my family is, you know, we've really restricted social media in our home. You know, we didn't let them have. Of course, they don't want Facebook. That's for the old people, right? So we didn't have to worry about that.
No offense to the old people listening. Which
would have probably been the lesser of the evils, I guess. But anyway, they wasn't allowed to have Instagram until they turned 13. That's really the only social media they have. Well, I guess Be Real, whatever that really is. They do have Be Real. We let them have that at 13. Blake was 14. I just let Blake have Snapchat when he turned 15 as part of his birthday because he's been begging about it for a long time. And frankly, I'm already considering deleting it from his phone because I can see how much time it's taking from him, how much time he's putting into it. Let me say it that way. But really, to get back to answer your question is, you know, we've really restricted what we've allowed them to have. We monitor who they like or are friends with or connected with or whatever that terminology is in today's time. And, you know, so we follow their accounts, we check their messaging, there's secrets that we have that they don't even know about, and I'm not sure if I should say on this podcast or not, but I'm going to, for the parents and the people out there that's trying to do it right. You know, we have an iPad, and, we all have iPhones so that we can connect everything. So, you know, on the iPad, they might be able to delete messages or texts or Instagram messages or whatever on their phone, but it still shows up on the iPad because Cynthia controls that.
Okay.
And she has access to their accounts from that, so we can still see what they have sent, even if they've deleted it.
Man, I'm so glad that didn't exist when I was in middle school and high school.
I would have been in jail or prison. I mean, I said I've done some dumb things. You throw social media in there.
I know, man. Well, and you record those dumb things, it's just, gosh. But sorry, continue.
I mean, so that's a lot of what we do, and that's kind of been our secret sauce that the kids will probably know about now, but that's fine. I don't care. I want them to know that we're monitoring it because I want them to know that we're doing it from a position of love and protection.
You care about them.
Not from wanting to be nosy helicopter parents or whatever that's called. I think that's what that's called. But I mean, that's not our mindset. Our mindset is to protect them and to keep them mentally healthy as best that we can. You can look at any news outlet on almost any given day, and there's been suicides or attempted suicides because of teens that have let social media drive everything that they think about and care about and twist their young minds, man, into just a wrinkled mess, and their solution is to end their life. The cyberbullying, huge now, and it continues to get worse. I just want to protect my kids from that, and again, hopefully they look back one day and they appreciate it. I know it drives them crazy now, and I feel like they probably resent that, if I'm being honest. I'm sure they do resent it to some extent. But again, we're doing it from a heart of love and protection. So. Yeah.
And that to me is leadership in the home. Because if you're not stewarding your home the direction that you feel like it needs to go, you're letting society parent your kids.
Yeah.
Another mentor of mine that's a pastor, I had this retreat I was on just a few weeks ago, and he's now the family minister of the church that he's at. And he said this quote, man, that just, even without, I don't have kids, I have a dog. I'm a dog dad. That's all I got. And even him, that's a nightmare. I mean, dude, it's daily something's happening or he's eating something. I can barely keep him alive, let alone kids right now if I had them. And the thing that Audrey and me and my wife talk about is, there's a constant attention for our kids from the world. And he said this quote, he said that there is a philosophical war that is being waged on our kids' minds right now.
Absolutely.
And it's our job as leaders in the church, but also as parents at home to help them not only fight that, but to steward them to protection.
Absolutely.
And, obviously that's social media, but even beyond that with relationships or with friendships, I hear stories all the time from families and even students that tell me stuff that, their parents may not know about until they figure it out.
Yeah.
And, the stuff that they're seeing and the things they're hearing at school and on their phones, it's night and day from when I was in middle school 10, 12 years ago. You were in, college probably at that point. And it's like this whole facade of culture is literally a battlefield.
Yeah.
And so outside of social media, in your home, what's your all's family rhythm? Let's talk about that. Do you all have a rhythm, or does it depend on the season?
Speaking of chaos that I had in my home, our family rhythm is kind of chaotic, but it's because we're trying to, balance so many things. Our kids are so active in, different sports. The daughter, she's in basketball and volleyball, and my son's in basketball and baseball, and they, travel teams and school teams, and that, the schedules. Cynthia has become an amazing logistical engineer, essentially that's what I call her. With just being able to keep up with who's supposed to be where, when, and who gets picked up when and where. But one thing that we do try to focus on, though, is trying to have family time when we're not on the road somewhere, when we're not at church, when we're not in a gym or on a ball field, or whatever the case may be. We make it a focus. Cynthia really does this more than I do, but she really makes it a focus to try to sit down and have family meals, and she cooks, and she's an amazing cook. We have conversation. We try to engage our kids a lot into, hey, who'd you eat lunch with today? Or, who are you talking to? Who'd you walk down the hall with? Or, just little things. Again, just so that they'll understand that we truly are interested in their life. and things on those lines. We talk about world problems. We talk about, real things that their friends are dealing with, or, if we hear stories from other families of their, things that their family may be dealing with, and whatever the dynamics are, whether it be social media issues, whatever. We talk about that in our home and talk about what's right about it, what's wrong about it, how I would hope that they would act if they were in that situation, or respond if they were in that situation. And it's hard to find a rhythm. But I guess that is our rhythm. It's not the same heartbeat. It may have a little bit of, rapid heartbeat,
right?
I guess, if you want to think of it that way. But when it comes church time, they know it's church time, and not to get off on a tangent, but we have fought so hard and prayed so hard, about their travel teams, and sometimes having to miss church functions or trying to balance that. And while we have had to miss some church functions or church meetings or church itself on a Sunday morning maybe, it has been much lesser than the outside person would probably ever consider. And that is just, I think, God answering our prayers, because even the times that we miss, we've got Caleb blasting in the car and we're singing, we're praising together, or, we might have, some prayer time or a small devotional ourselves. And Blake, my son, is really good about this. When we travel places and we know we're going to miss church, he always takes his devotional with him, and so he kind of does that himself. And, Bethany has a good devotional that she's doing too, and I think she's very responsible in doing that. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question about a rhythm, but I'm kind of giving you a picture into our life, and how we try to balance it all, and still emphasizing that Jesus in our life is more important than anything else.
Yeah. Well, that's your rhythm.
Yeah.
That's essentially the answer to the question, that I ask is, your rhythm is not just your schedule, it's your priority.
Yeah.
And the things that you have at firsthand that are important develop everything around your schedule.
Yeah.
I love hearing that, because not only are they two of our students, but they're two of our leaders here. I mean, it's cool to hear that they do those things from their parent, but also just as teenagers now that are in the midst of that fire, that they're making a priority for that. And so obviously that stuff didn't happen overnight. That's years of you and Cynthia pouring into your kids. But even within that, your own marriage, let's talk about that. Not just the kids, but even leading your wife in the home.
Yeah.
What's that look like for you?
I don't hold back with how much I love Cynthia in front of the kids. I mean, I don't mean that to be like a gross thing or whatever, but they see me frequently hugging her, giving her a kiss, maybe a little smack on the hip or something appropriate.
Or they
hear me tell her I love her a lot, how beautiful I think she is, and I mean those things.
Yep.
And I'm not saying it just to be doing it, or doing it just to be doing it in front of the kids. It's just, that's how I feel about her, and I want her to know about that. And so I know the kids see and hear that, because a lot of times I'll hear, it's gross, or whatever. But I want them to see how much I love their mother and how much she means to me, and especially for Blake. I want him to know how he should treat his wife one day, and I want Bethany to know how she should expect to be treated one day. So I have had those thoughts, and I have had those conversations with Cynthia and with the kids. That a lot of the reason I make sure I say things to their mom, or maybe hug or kiss their mom in front of them, is I want them to know that that's important. I'm to love Cynthia more than I am the kids, and her and I, our life is one. So anyway, some of that is kind of what we do, but the kids have seen bad. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I mean, going back to my chaotic life and angry-filled life, there was a lot of cursing in my home, lots of cursing in my home, where Cynthia, they got in trouble if they said poop or something. Maybe you might have to edit that out. But, and I've laughed at that for so many years in my life, but going back, I'm like, that's nice.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of cursing, a lot of screaming, a lot of fighting, and quick-tempered, a lot of quick-tempered people in my family that unfortunately I got the same DNA. And so they've seen me, get pretty upset with Cynthia, and scream and curse and, throw ridiculous fits and things along those lines. And again, just being real here, man. I mean, I'm not perfect. And those are the times I look back and feel like the lowest form of scum on the earth, because I know that my kids seen and heard that. And I realize how it had to have made Cynthia feel. That's the thing that I don't really battle with alcohol. I don't do that. I don't battle with drugs. I don't do that. Pornography, I don't consider that. Gambling, some of these big sins, even though they're all the same in God's eyes, I don't struggle with those things. What I struggle with is my temper and my anger sometimes. But I do kind of feel that the Lord's helping me mellow out the older I get, the wiser I get. And but our marriage is amazing. We'll be married 21 years this August, and I really wouldn't want to ever think about doing life with anybody else. And I just hope our kids feed off of that. And for Blake, as I said, realize how he should treat his wife, and for Bethany, what she should expect from her husband one day. Yeah.
That's so good, man. It's so good. And then it's vital. I mean, especially with, the craze of relationships and then the dating scene and everything becoming, so hypersexualized that everything in culture is okay, and the standard of marriage is diminished now to you can be with whatever you want to be, whoever you want to be, live with each other, Leading in the home, you have to lead with conviction, and you have to lead with moral and value. And so, I know you're a person that does that, but even your honesty of your struggle, I think, is transparent for them. And that's leadership by saying, okay, Blake, yes, I did this. Here's what you shouldn't do, even if you do that.
Right.
It's life. It's real life application. And man, I love that. Absolutely love that. And with this discussion, I really feel, because like the demographic is kind of cool. Like, this is a podcast to reach students and young adults, but anybody.
Right.
And right now, the majority of our people listening are 45 and older.
Really?
Which is awesome.
That is awesome.
It's super cool that, older folk are getting into what we're speaking to them about this generation. And so, speaking to that age group, as a 44-year-old man, you've got 2 kids, a wife, 2 dogs, you've got the family unit. What would you say to that person that is maybe in the grandparent situation, or maybe is the person that's not a mom or dad that's raising the kid? How would you speak some positivity or influence or advice to them?
Just be there for them. I think the kids, whether they ever will admit it or not, they want to know that somebody's there for them and that somebody truly cares and truly loves, whether it's their biological parent, whether it's an adoptive parent, whether it's a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, whoever it may be that's listening. It's be there and be present. Be present may be the most important thing, because even as adults, we can get so distracted with our phones, with work, with whatever, and we may be sitting right here beside each other, but my mind may be way over there somewhere, or out of this world somewhere, whatever. But to be present, I try to do that. And I am going to try to do a better job at trying to have more phone downtime when we're together too. Phones down, let's have some eye contact and let's have conversation. That's kind of my next phase, I guess, in spiritual leadership in my home. But to you that's out there listening, and to Tyler's question, be there, love them, be present, and care for them. And that's what this generation needs. They need to know that people are still good and that people still care. So, yeah.
The number one thing we're told in student ministry, not just here, but all across the board from all my friends, all across the nation that are student guys, is that students constantly say, we just want more time with our families. Or really? We want to know that our families love us, that we're a priority to them. Because, man, you got to think, the rat race of life gets in the way of so many families right now.
Yeah.
You've got dad that's working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. Mom's doing the same thing. The kids got school and sports. And it's almost as if, the kid's on their own in a way.
Right.
And feels alone. And from, even in my story, single mom pretty much, it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
She worked and took care of me, and dad was there, but was in and out. And even looking back in my story, having people outside of my family that cared and loved me mattered.
Yeah.
Because when I didn't have it at home, I knew I had it somewhere else, and it was in a student pastor. And it's funny though that answer is universal, that kids want to be involved in their parents' lives, but they want them involved in theirs.
Yeah.
It's not a one-way road, it's a two-lane thing. And so, that I think that's huge. From someone who doesn't have kids yet, these are things that I'm absorbing and learning and looking at of, okay, that's the next phase of my life.
Yeah.
When we buy a house, it's baby time. And I'm in no way, shape, form, or fashion ready to be a dad, but at the same time,
I don't think none of us ever are, man.
Yeah, and you learn as you go.
Yeah.
Life's a dance. You learn as you go.
Right.
Sometimes you lead, other times you follow.
Yeah.
I forgot who wrote
Brooks?
that. Who wrote that?
No, is it Garth Brooks? I don't know.
May have been, but hey,
Yeah.
it works. But in that vein of conversation, I think you said it right. Is that being present is what matters the most.
Yeah.
That when you make time is invested. Priorities are the things that you make time for.
Yeah.
And your kids ultimately are that. Your wife is ultimately that. And, balancing the job and balancing sports, you prioritize what you want to be first in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think a lot of people have it backwards. And I really hope that this conversation is helpful, that it gives some advice and insight. But, kind of to wrap up the thought and the conversation with kind of a final thought, what would be the one thing that you would tell younger Josh to do different now?
Don't sweat the small stuff. The old cliche, don't cry over spilled milk. I I have gotten angry and fussed at the kids, or maybe even spanked them or disciplined at some point in their lives for some of the littlest, dumbest things, probably. And looking back, man, it's like that was nothing. Why did I get mad at that? Why did I react in such a way to something that was so trivial, something so minute? That's probably what I would tell the younger Josh is to be, to be a little more open and to not sweat the small stuff, man, and to be more present. I probably wasn't as mentally present a lot of the kids' life, but just because of the nature of my job, I felt like I was always on and never off work. It's a 24/7 type job that I do, and in the positions that I had as I continued to kind of grow my career and climb the ladders, phone calls, texts, emails were almost constant. And way too many times, days, nights, weekends, I would sit on my phone answering emails, looking at reports, things like that. Just be present, and maybe that's why I said that answer so quick to your earlier question, because I regret not being more present at a lot of the time.
That's good, man. That's good. And, with that, I think there's a part B to that final thought question to the people that may not be spiritual, that may not go to church, that may have grown up in an environment where Jesus was never talked about, or they are a part of another religion or within that scope. What would you give them advice for in the sense of prioritizing a relationship with Christ?
Well, if they don't have it, they need to find that on themselves. They need to find that for themselves.
Yeah.
And God is there if we look for Him. And His Scripture is true that if we call upon Him, He'll be there. He'll be there to answer us. And so I would just encourage them to at least try to find God in their life and to have and build a relationship with Him. Just because we become a Christian and begin to believe in Jesus and begin to have quiet times and devotional times and studying His Bible, memorizing His Bible, does not mean, nor is there anywhere in the Bible where it says it's going to make life easier. But knowing that I have God on my side and that I can call upon Him at any moment of life, night or day, weekends, president holidays, federal holidays, whatever, man, He's there for me. And it may not be an immediate response that I get from Him, but if nothing else, I have an immediate sense of peace and calm because I know I've let it over to Him.
Yeah.
And I've given it to Him, and I know that He's going to work it out for me. That's where my faith is. That's taken 44 years to build. So to you that may be searching for the Lord, or maybe of other religion that's not Southern Baptist or whatever, search it out for yourself and don't let, a preacher or a bishop or someone just tell you what the Bible says. Go search it out for yourself and fact check it for sure.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, man, obviously I appreciate you and your friendship and your leadership, not only in
likewise, man.
And in our ministry, but in my life. And, you are an example and a mentor, and I really mean that. But man, so much wisdom from 44 years, and the gray hairs show it. You still look good for 44.
This at 26, man.
You turned gray at 26?
Yeah, the first few, yeah.
Bro, I've already got some in my beard.
Can you edit that out?
No, we can't. That's staying in. But hey, thank you all so much for joining us on this episode of Talk to Walk, talking about influence and how to lead in the home. We are so grateful for Josh. If you are new to the podcast, make sure you drop us a review. You can check the video out on YouTube, but if not, that's all good. Check it out. There's other episodes that are posted on our Spotify and iTunes, but come back next week. We'll be live again for our next episode of Talk to Walk. Have a great week.